Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at EX3, and EX3 offers us lots of new and powerful tools to build and iterate on some new and existing decks. And today's deck I'm going to be taking a look at is going to be a brand new iteration on the D-Brigade deck. So D-Brigade hasn't really gotten a meaningful update since BT5 with the inclusion of the blocker rookie, but now in EX3 we actually have a whole new evolution line to play around with and include in the deck to make it better than it was before. And the deck isn't really going to be changing that much just because at its core, it's still a Rookie Rush-esque deck where you're going to be playing a whole bunch of your low-end Digimon, hope they end up dying, so that way you could try to build one singular stack all the way up to a Darkdramon finish. Whether you're actually hard playing the old Darkdramon or trying to Digivolve into the new Darkdramon, it's still just trying to help play all of your Commandramons and use the fact that you have a lot of D-Brigades in your trash to make something very powerful happen. So with all that said and done, let's just dive right into the deck profile. Starting off with the Digitama, I am going to be running 5 Digi-Eggs just because, well, we're going to be using our Digi-Eggs quite a lot because we're going to be constantly moving out our rookies. So I'm going to be running Pagumon as the main Digitama just because it does have an on-delete ability that's helping with the overall consistency of the deck, which is something a deck like this needs because we're not always going to be Digivolving as often as other decks. So Pagumon's on-delete ability just lets us look at the top card of our deck when our Digimon is deleted, then we get to add a black Digimon into our hand, otherwise it goes to the bottom, so it has a pretty decent chance of success. And then the 5th Digi-Egg could really be anything you want it to be, but I'm going to be using one copy of the brand new Missimon from EX3 just because Reboot could help make some of our cards a little bit more effective than they normally would be. So this is the preferred egg that we want to see when we're going all the way up our stack, just because Reboot makes it really hard for the opponent to interact with our Digimon at times if they just don't have the right type of removal. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Commandramon. So this is the BT3 version of Commandramon, and, well, he is a D-Brigade, he is a cyborg, he's really cheap to hard play, and he has some pretty decent DP, just making him a really easy to use card for the deck, even though he doesn't have any abilities at all. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Commandramon. So this is the BT4 version of Commandramon, and this is one of the most, if not the most important Commandramon in the deck, just because his on-delete ability essentially is going to try to replace himself with another Commandramon, so that way we always have a body on the field to be able to use. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Commandramon. So this is the BT5 version of Commandramon, and this is a pretty decent Commandramon acting as a solid defensive card to use, just because he has the blocker ability. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Hagurumon. So this is the EX1 version of Hagurumon, and even though this has absolutely nothing to do with D-Brigades at all, this is just a good card to synergize with machines and cyborgs, which, well, a lot of the D-Brigades are also part cyborg, so it's just acting as a good way to have some alternative card draw in the deck. So when we hard play this card, we get to discard 1 card with machine or cyborg in its traits from our hand, and for doing that, it allows us to draw 2 cards, essentially replacing the card we discarded and replacing this card itself, so it's just introducing some good cycling for the deck. Next, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Commandramon. So this is the EX3 version of Commandramon, and he adds some extra protection to our various other Digimon, because he has the decoy ability. His decoy ability is more specific for our D-Brigade Digimon, but that's okay, because the lower the level on the decoy, the less investment we've put into the Digimon, making the decoy ability actually pretty good at being able to protect our higher stage Digimon. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Commandramon. So this is the starter deck version of Commandramon, and like the first Commandramon that we saw, he is a vanilla card, and we're using this card mostly just because, well, he's a Commandramon by name, he's a cyborg and a D-Brigade, on top of the fact that he is going to be one of the most aggressive rookies that we have, just because his 5000 DP stat line is actually pretty strong. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Mekanorimon. So I was going back and forth on if this should just be the old Sealsdramon, but I do think Mekanorimon is a pretty decent card in his own right because, well, he's a machine to interact with our Hagurumon and our Kazu tamer, on top of the fact that he's going to be one of the best, if not the best, early game blocker that we could have out. That also has some good synergy because of his play cost as well with Pride Memory Boost. So he's going to be the main defensive card we want to use, just because he could basically infinitely block anything that's smaller than him. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Grumblemon. So even though Grumblemon has, again, no real good synergies with the deck, he's just the hybrid card to include into the deck for that hybrid finish when we break up all of the opponent's security and still have some memory left over and need a good way to be able to close out the game. That's where cards like this come into play. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of the brand new Sealsdramon. So the brand new Sealsdramon is a really decent card for how this deck wants to function, especially with the rest of his new evolution line. So he natively has the jamming ability, which means he could be a pretty aggressive card, and we want to always swing with him, knowing that our swing is going to be safe. Then on top of that, the inheritable ability is what we're really after with this card, and why this card is super important, just because his inheritable ability gives our other D-Brigades rush once per turn when we hard play another Digimon with D-Brigade in its traits, which is going to be a lot of our Commandramons. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm only going to be running 4 copies of the brand new EX3 version of Tankdramon. So you could run the old Tankdramon if you wanted to, but I felt like this Tankdramon is just the better one of the two, and the one I wanted to see more often than not. So he has a nice when digivolving ability that lets us try to play our other Commandramons, which is really good because with the Sealsdramon inheritable ability, it just allows us to have access at rush and be as aggressive with our cards as we possibly can. So we get a look at the top 3 and then play a card with D-Brigade in its traits with a play cost of 5 or less from among them for free, and then trash the rest, which is pretty good at filling up our trash as well as being able to play another body, all just for digivolving into this card. Then his inheritable ability just, again, lets us try to be as aggressive as we possibly can and try to make sure that we could play our cards as best as we possibly can, where when one of your Digimon with D-Brigades in its traits attacks, could be this card, could be a different card, it doesn't necessarily matter, we get to reveal the top 2 cards of our deck and play a Commandramon from among them for free, and then, again, trash the rest, so that way we could try to fill up our trash as quickly as we can for our Darkdramons. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Darkdramon. So this is the BT4 version of Darkdramon, and he's just a good game finisher, just because he has the rush ability native to him already. So whether we digivolve up into him or hard play him, we could use this ability to be super aggressive with. And we have easy ways to be able to hard play him, just because as long as we're at 3 memory and we have 5 or more D-Brigades in our trash, then we get to return them back into our deck on the top in any order and gain 2 memory for each card returned this way. So ideally we want to return all 5, so that way we turn his 13 play cost into a 3 play cost, which makes him a very easy level 6 to use for the deck. And then I'm also going to be running 2 copies of the brand new EX3 version of Darkdramon. So I was kind of going back and forth on the ratios in terms of which one I wanted to see more and which one I wanted to see less, but I felt like since I'm not trying to digivolve it all that often, I just wanted to see less of the new Darkdramon, even though the new Darkdramon is still a very good card for this deck to use. So his stats are a little bit stronger than the old Darkdramon, and he has an easy way to be able to digivolve up into him as long as we have a nice healthy trash, because when we digivolve up into him, we get to return 5 cards with D-Brigades in their traits from our trash to the top of our deck, just like the old one, except instead of reducing the play cost or gaining the memory back, he's reducing his digivolution cost. So essentially, if we have enough cards in our trash that he wants to interact with, we can make him a free Digimon to digivolve into, which is just pretty powerful. And then the ability that we're trying to gain off of this Darkdramon is some good removal for being able to swarm the field, on top of some multi-attacking potential. And then the last mega of the deck in only level 7 is going to be one copy of DeathXmon. So DeathXmon is still just insane on how easy it is to use this card, just because he reduces his play cost as long as the opponent has Digimon and Tamers on the field, and the more they have, the more he's going to be reduced. And we don't necessarily care about his when Digivolving part of the ability, just because most of the time we're going to be hard playing him, because he also gets it on his on-play effect, where we get to de-Digivolve 1 on all of the opponent's Digimon and delete their level 4 or lower Digimon. So this is just a good board clear to try to make sure that we could keep the opponent's field as empty as we possibly can, so it's easier for us to be able to aggress and control the opponent's field. Then he also has some good recursive removal, where at the end of the opponent's turn, we get to delete the opponent's Digimon with the lowest play cost, so it's just good recursive removal, making sure that it's going to be as hard on the opponent to play their cards as it possibly can be. Next, onto the Tamers, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Izzy. So this is the BT4 version of Izzy, and this is a pretty important card because he's going to be our memory fixing tamer, so he's always going to be hard setting us to 3, so that way we could always make sure that our Darkdramon from BT4 is going to be as usable as it possibly can be. Then on top of that, he has a nice on-play ability that's not only just letting us have information of what's on the top and rig the top of our deck, so that way we could try to make certain abilities trigger and be as consistent as we possibly can, but he's also gaining us a memory as long as all of the cards that were revealed were black, so he's essentially a 3-costed tamer on a memory fixing tamer, and if this pops out in security, it also is going to act as a good anti-tempo tool as well. And then the last tamer of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Kazu. So Kazu is just another card that has some really good synergy at not only just cycling through our deck, but also helping fix and gain some extra memory to make more powerful plays possible. So at the start of our main, if we have a Digimon with Cyborg or Machine and its traits in play, which is pretty much almost everything in the deck, then we just generically get to gain 1 memory, which is pretty good because this does stack per Kazu, so the more Kazus we have, the more memory we'll be able to gain. Then, on top of that, during all turns, when one of your Digimon with Cyborg or Machine becomes suspended, whether it's us attacking or us blocking, it doesn't necessarily matter, then we get to suspend this tamer to draw 1 card and then discard 1 card, so we even have some good added cycling to accelerate the deck's overall game plan. And then as far as the option suite goes, I'm going to be running 3 copies of Ultimate Flare as the big hard removal card, just because de-Digivolve is very annoying for the opponents to deal with. So the fact that this has de-Digivolve 3 is just already pretty strong, being able to reduce basically a Mega back down to a Rookie, and then we get to delete all of the opponent's Digimon with a play cost of 3 or less to clean up that said Rookie that we just de-Digivolved their Mega into most of the time, and to be able to clean up the rest of the field of any other cards that we might not want on their lower stages. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 3 copies of Pride Memory Boost. So Pride Memory Boost is just an alternative way to be able to play our cards while being a memory boost to use for its delay ability to gain memory back to make more powerful follow-up plays later. Namely, if we don't have our Izzy set up, this is going to be the other good card to line up our Darkdramon, at least the BT4 version. So this card more specifically states that we get to reveal the top 3 cards of our deck and play a black Digimon with a play cost of 4 or less from among them for free, and then trash the rest. So it's just basically doing everything the deck already wants to do, have an alternative way to be able to play your Digimon, pick and choose which Digimon you get to potentially play, and fill up our trash so that way we could line up cards in our trash to use for our Darkdramons later, making this just a very high synergistic card for the deck. But as far as the general breakdown on how to actually go about playing the deck, for the most part, it is just a Rookie Rush style of deck. We're just going to hatch our eggs and move them out as quickly as we possibly can, so we could try to flood the field as best as we possibly can, and we're going to be smart about how we're going to evolve in raising and the cards that we are going to be hard playing to try to choke and starve the opponent of their resources. So that's just what we're doing here. As far as the abilities on these, most of them don't matter except for our Commandramon that replaces itself and the blocker Commandramon. The decoy is nice for our higher stage Digimon when we get there, but for the early stages of the game, it's not really super important. but if we wanted to, we actually do have an evolution line we can now try to take advantage of. So the fact that Sealsdramon has jamming is actually pretty relevant at being aggressive with and making sure our Digimon survives the attack. So we could then use Tankdramon, and his inheritable ability feeds into Tankdramon's ability to help flood the field and to be able to constantly spawn bodies that are able to attack right away with. And that all then feeds into how Darkdramon wants to play, just because once our trash is nice and full, then we could use that as a resource to basically reduce his evolution cost to 0 on top of our Tankdramon, and then that will allow us to be able to use him as a very powerful stack for when we're swinging with him, being able to play a D-Brigade, then delete the opponent's Digimon. The D-Brigade will have Rush, and he unsuspends, so that way we could get 3 attacks off of this card and just another D-Brigade in our hand alone. So that's just creating some very powerful additional pushes that the deck didn't really have before. But we still do have the old Darkdramon as a good game finisher, but we do have to be at 3 memory to be able to effectively use the card, because it's not a cost reduction, it's gaining the memory back. But we do have easy ways to line that up in the form of Pride Memory Boost and Izzy, because Izzy will just hard set us to 3, and Pride Memory Boost will gain us 2 memory, and we're always going to be at least 1 memory. Then the reason why I like Pride Memory Boost is more flooding, so it just helps us play our low-level Digimon, which is why I like Mekanorimon, to be able to line up a blocker to help protect our Sealsdramon, on top of the fact that it is still a machine to combo with our Hagurumon and our Kazu. So there's the whole intended synergy and lines of play there, on top of being a really good blocker for the early stages of the game, blocking anything that's basically smaller than him indefinitely. Then Hagurumon's just some added cycling and card draw to be able to get to the cards that we need to see and set up our trash as best as we possibly can for our Darkdramons, on top of the fact that we do just have a Grumblemon as that hybrid alternative win condition finish, just because we still already want to use our 2 Tamers, which are both very good for the deck. So that's kind of just the general breakdown on what you're supposed to do with the deck. It's just a simple Rookie Rush style of deck that just has lots of good aggro potential. And then there's still just a whole bunch of other tech and tools that we could think about incorporating into the deck, all depending on how you want to play and what you actually do want to use for various different situations and metas. So we do have a slew of different floodgates that we could lean into depending on where the meta currently is. So we do have Chumon to block memory gain. We do have cards like Kawagamon to stop the fact that they are going to ignore Digivolution requirements. And we also have Chikurimon to stop them from reducing their play cost. So we do have just a wide variety of different floodgates for us to use. Then, on top of that, we do have the other Sealsdramon, as I mentioned before. The main reason why I'm not running them is because of Pride Memory Boost. It is easier to use Mekanorimon than the old Sealsdramon, but the old Sealsdramon still is pretty good. Then we do have the Nanimon as a good security threat, so you could still lean into the security aspect of the deck just because we're going to be hyper aggressive. So the fact that this could just pop out of security, play itself for free, and then we could use that to then digivolve into our higher stages with or attack, just makes him a very appealing card. Then, as I stated before, we do have the old Tankdramon from BT4. I'm not super thrilled with this card just because he is a little bit harder to use, but he's still pretty good when used correctly at being able to constantly be able to try to play and replay your Commandramons. Then, if you're just looking for an alternative at level 5 in the deck just for tempo, just to try to get up into the brand new Darkdramon and use them as best and efficiently as we possibly can, then we do have access to Warumanzimon as that easy card to use because of his low play cost and low evolution cost. Or if you just want to try to use a alternative level 5 and line up some DNA action, we do have Chimeramon just because it is pretty easy for this deck to be able to spawn multiple bodies and multiple level 4 bodies, so we could take advantage of this to try to shove inheritable abilities underneath, again, so that way we could try to make our Darkdramon as effective as we possibly can. And then if you don't want to run DeathXmon, then we do have some alternative level 7s in the deck that we could run. A lot of the black-purple level 7s are already pretty good in the form of Millenniumon and Omnimon's Warp Defeat on the cheaper end. But if you can afford the substitute, I would think that Omnimon's Ward Defeat is a little bit better just because he is a security Digimon. So at worst, he could still pop out a security and you have a free level 7 to use. Then if we Digivolve into him, we get to have some good Tamer Hate and Removal, which is something a lot of decks don't have. And then on top of that, his On Delete ability also still pretty good at being a threat, where that's going to be the Digimon removal on this level 7. But there are just some other option cards that we could think about utilizing. So there's just a slew of different black removal tools that we could use. Dark Roar is going to be the highlight just because, well, it's a D-Brigade removal option that gets stronger per D-Brigade that we have on the field. And then we do have some other interesting tech and tools in option form that we could think about using in the form of Parabolic Junk as basically the hammer spark of the deck to be able to gain some extra memory when our Digimon is deleted. Or we do have some other good utility black cards in the form of Congo and in the form of Breath of the Gods to try to stop the opponent's actions and add some extra protection to not only just us, but our Digimon as well. Then we do have some other decent tamers that we could think about using. Or if you just want a tamer that's a little bit more generic and pretty powerful and effective in his own right, then we do have Analog Youth as a really cheap tamer to use for some good digging for trying to find the parts and pieces that we're looking for while filling up our trash at the same time. And he's pretty good in stack-based decks as long as our level 5 or higher has an inheritable ability, which thanks to the new Darkdramon we do kind of want to use. Then it allows us to gain a memory and basically reload our empty egg into our raising area, so that way we could try to make more aggressive lines of play. Or de-incentivize the opponent from deleting our Digimon just because they could lose some potential tempo. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comments below, and down in the description below are a couple of different ways you could support me and the channel. So I do have a TCG Player affiliate link, so when you use that link to buy cards off of TCG Player, then some of that money will go to supporting me and the channel. I also do make and sell playmats over on Overcard Gamers on Facebook, so when you buy a playmat with my design, then some of that money will also go to help supporting me and the channel. And on top of all of that, I do have a Twitch account over on twitch.tv/Zenitsu, so giving me a follow and a subscription also helps support me there, and I do play Digimon on top of various other games on that platform as well. So thank you everyone for watching, and as always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content, and I'll see you in the next video.